The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferris.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast. By the way, this next segment brought to you in part by the United Labor Agency. You can find more at ulagency.org. Let's go to our live line right now. We have three distinguished guests joining us today, all from an organization called Sword Health. And the website is swordhealth.com. Love the website because it really caught my attention. If it caught my attention, it's got to catch your attention. A life free from pain starts here. Let me repeat that. A life free from pain starts here. It's very, very engaging. And we're going to talk all about Sword Health on the show today. Especially, we're going to zero in on the effects of musculoskeletal disorders, especially on unionized workers. You know how tough people work, especially in the trades. Well, it's important that you want to get away from pain. Let's check in with Sword Health. All right, we have three people joining us on our live line right now. I'm going to start with Sean McLaughlin, Vice President of Labor and Trust. Sean, I'm reading you've been with the organization for a couple of decades. Talk to me about your background, how you got involved in Sword Health. I'm sure that's an interesting story. Go ahead, my brother.
Thanks, Flash. I appreciate the question. I've been working in the labor space for almost 2 decades, working with health plans in New York City, making sure we deliver these great, amazing benefits to unions and funds, and also worked with a consulting company, a national company, and we provided services to labor unions, public sector, commercial market, and really had the opportunity to come over to Sword Health. Really love what they're doing, love their mission about freeing 2 billion people from pain, and great opportunity to come over here and start to provide these amazing solutions around musculoskeletal care to labor unions. So I've been doing it with Sword Health for about 2 years now.
And I see that Sword Health holds over 36 technology patents, making them a market leader. That's pretty important. Let's go to Jerry Gallo. Jerry is a regional vice president of labor and trust with Sword Health. Jerry, fill in the blanks. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I spent, it's good to be here, Flash, by the way, but I've spent almost 30 years in the employee benefit and labor benefit space in various roles, working for a myriad of insurance companies, particularly in the Northeast. I also spent some time as a retail broker helping companies, corporations, and labor procure benefits. And about 2.5 years ago, I had an opportunity to come over to the digital health side. And not really a technology guy, but I know labor well. And Sean introduced me to the company. And I've been here for 2.5 years and absolutely love what I do, making sure we're delivering pain-free solutions for labor.
What's the old line? If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
100%. Yeah, it took
there
me
you
over.
Go.
Took me over 50 years to get there, Flash, but thanks.
Okay, let's go to Jen. Jen Delman is a licensed physical therapist, and I could probably use you in some capacity. I've had all kind of issues. I tore my hamstring. I broke my foot. I think I broke both my hands, and I have to say something about physical therapy. And I'm not working in the trades or anything. I'm just a broadcaster. So I try to leave a normal life, as normal as possible. Maybe in my younger days, that wasn't the case. But the bottom line is it's important that people get the proper physical therapy. And I've seen people like yourself do wonders. So, Jen, talk to me about that.
Flash, initially it sounds like we probably need to get you enrolled in the SWORD program. There might be a few things that we can work on. So I've been with SWORD for the last 3 years. I've been heavily member facing, but I worked with an in-person brick and mortar PT clinic before coming to SWORD. And although PT, as we know, is incredibly effective, it can be really hard for individuals to access. And that is a constant frustration point for physical therapists and for patients trying to access care. So that ultimately leads them down the surgery route, leads them down the medication route because they're not able to work PT into their schedule. And so, what I found with SWORD is that our solution is there to be able to make PT much more flexible for people to access. And so, that's one of the reasons that I personally am so passionate about SWORD because we're able to access so many more people, give them the care that they need in the flexibility of their own schedule, their own home, and not having to take time off work, pay expensive copays, make appointments. Have transportation, all of those things that are typical barriers when it comes to access to care. So SWORD's really able to kind of open that door to individuals to be able to go down the conservative treatment route.
That's what really caught my attention, digital physical therapy. I mean, that's quite fascinating, and I see on their website, again, the website is swordhealth.com, that artificial intelligence is a big component in this. And I'll be honest with you, I've been beaten up on artificial intelligence because in the labor world, we're scared that it's going to take jobs away. I think this interview and what I'm reading here is a good example of how it aids the workforce. It helps the workforce, and that's really important. I want that to be one of the takeaways today. Let's go back to Sean here. Pre-pandemic telehealth, remote monitoring of health conditions, digital musculoskeletal health solutions. Well, they were really not part of any conversations with many labor funds. Now, Sean, can you tell me your perspective on how COVID has shaped the design of new solutions and benefits that are being offered in the market? Can you help me out on that?
Absolutely, Flash. COVID-19 pandemic has significantly accelerated the adoption of telehealth, remote monitoring, and digital muscular health solutions in the marketplace. And it really, really helped advance the adoption of these solutions in the market, and particularly for labor unions, and in a couple areas. So we talk about digital MSK health solutions, virtual physical health and therapy. With the pandemic, a lot of clinics were closed, they had limited capacity. And as a result, digital platforms for physical therapy and MSK have started to grow. These platforms now offer personalized care with doctors of physical therapy, with guided exercises, real time corrections, video consultations, and technology that helps track the members' progress as they go through their care treatment plan. Additionally, it's helped folks that are in rural or underserved areas where traditionally they couldn't find these types of services available to them without driving an extended period of time, which sometimes isn't manageable when you have to do that 2 to 3 times a week for 8 to 12 weeks. And then, labor unions started looking at expanding coverage because of the pandemic, and many labor unions and funds expanded their health plans to include these really great remote monitoring services because Flash, they recognize the value to the member for health and for productivity on the job site as well. So, in conclusion, I'll just add that, COVID-19 has really been a catalyst of innovation in healthcare delivery, pushing telehealth, remote monitoring, and digital health solutions from the fringe of being an option really into part of the mainstream practice that we're seeing now.
Yeah, it sounds like a wake-up call, made you think out of the box a little bit, and that's what this conversation is leading into. And I'm glad you brought up MSK because for the rest of this interview, I don't want to say that word anymore. Musculoskeletal. It is a mouthful. It is a mouthful. Jerry, question here for you. Could you discuss any misconceptions that unions may have when evaluating MSK solutions and how important it is to look at the end-to-end picture. Go ahead, my friend.
I was going to congratulate you. It was very impressive how you pronounce that, because Sean and I screw that up on a daily basis. So, so, but there's a lot of misconceptions that are out there, and we'll run through a few of them. And most people think that a single solution is going to solve their issues, right? Some people say it's a pain med. Other people say it might be a specific type of therapy. Somebody might say it's my exercise therapist. It just depends. But we know that the reality is that there are multiple ways to solve this problem, because everybody's severity and abilities vary. So we use different conditions and different approaches to help solve that. Another one is immediate fixes. So people think, hey, listen, I'll be able to do something and get some quick relief. And unfortunately, we see them resort to pain meds and electronic gadgets that don't work. But the reality is that the effective solutions are the ones that you often have a long-term strategy with. And there's ongoing assessment, prevention, and a gradual rehab that takes place. Another one is technology is sufficient by itself. Well, advanced technology can solve a lot of MSK issues. We do know that, and we're evidenced of that. However, while technology is a critical component, there's got to be some sort of human factors that are integrated along the way. Ergonomic practices have to come into play, and then also a personalized treatment plan. And as Sean mentioned earlier, doctors of physical therapy 100% of the time with every one of those members. And cost over value is another one that we see. People think that a cheaper solution is going to help minimize their expenses. Well, if a cheap solution does that, it's not going to give you the most effectiveness. And that's been proven. You got to look at high quality, comprehensive solutions that are going to lead to these long-term outcomes that are going to keep people from going to surgery and improve productivity. And then lastly, in closing, I'd say kind of a reactive approach is another misconception. Addressing the issue only after it arises, because we have many people, as we like to say, are suffering in silence. 10 years of back pain is going to result in many, many more issues from a mental health standpoint, and anxiety and depression. So the reality is, for us, you have to be proactive, you have to be preventive, and it's essential for you to solve those MSK problems. And our mantra is movement is medicine.
Jerry, you touched on something that really caught my attention. You mentioned pain meds. And, we are a take a pill society and everything's going to go away. You know that. You know how prevalent that was for so many years. And then it blew up with the opioid epidemic. And Jen, I want to talk to you about that briefly. But I understand that 50%, and I didn't realize the number was so high, 50% of Americans, so half Americans suffer from MSK disorders, and many would say those percentages are much higher in the trade unions. I can believe that because the work is so physical. It makes a lot of sense. Are you seeing fund members use opioids or jump to surgeries instead of traditional physical therapy? Is that happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've seen, especially in the labor space, that people are using ibuprofen as a basic food group. We know that the work is really physical, but we also know that individuals have to bank a certain amount of hours to be eligible for benefits. And so, because of that, they're not wanting to take time away from the job site. They're wanting to focus on what they need to, being at work, banking those hours, and being able to provide for their family. So, it becomes much easier to take a medication rather than take time away from work and get the help and the care that they need. We mentioned that quick fix earlier, just pop a pill. So, what we've really focused on in our space is providing the ability to get care in a much more flexible manner, being able to meet the member where they're at, get the care that they need at home, be able to take that time to better themselves, get stronger, get more functional, improve their strength, while still being able to do everything that they need for work, be able to bank the number of hours they need, be able to spend the time with their family that they need, but be able to easily do these sessions earlier in the morning, later at night, on the weekends, whatever works for their personal schedule, to be able to do that while providing for their family and being at work as much as they need to.
Makes sense to me, no doubt about that. We have three very distinguished individuals joining us on our live line today, all from an organization called Sword Health. SwordHealth.com is a website, and if you go there, you'll see their mission statement, which makes a whole lot of sense. A life free from pain starts here. And I'll tell you, what I really like about that is how many people have saved money on it, well over $500,000 because of what they're doing at Sword Health. We'll talk more about that. Joining us on our live line, Sean McLaughlin, Jerry Gallo, and Jen Delman. Sean and Jerry, One is a vice president of labor and trust, Jerry, a regional vice president, and the woman you just heard, Jen Delman, is a physical therapist and senior clinical specialist. We'll continue right after this.
This is America's Workforce.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. Doing a special here on America's Workforce involving Sword Health. A life free from pain starts here. Go to that website, swordhealth.com. A lot of people have saved a lot of money because they linked up with Sword Health. And the target here, the effects of musculoskeletal disorders, especially in unionized workers. You know, you work hard. A lot of times you come home and you're not feeling well. Well, there is an alternative to opioids, to whatever kind of pain medication. Jen, you talked about ibuprofen, and I've had my share of that over the years too. And as you age, you got arthritis, you got a lot of issues. Sean, I want to talk to you about the fund and how, because you're the vice president of labor and trust, how did the fund first realize or become aware there was a need to address these issues when it comes to musculoskeletal issues? Can you help me out on that one?
Yes, Flash. When we talk about MSK, we're really talking about the amount of cost that's being used for members to seek care. So a lot of times, funds will have work with their health plan and do what's called a utilization review. And those can happen every 6 months or every year. And the health plan will give a synopsis of all the claims history from 12, 24 to 36 months out and trend it. And a lot of the time, you will see trends in different areas. MSK is usually, up there with diabetes, hypertension, and oncology as far as cost of care. And it starts to raise some flags that they're spending a lot of money around MSK. And then subsequently, what happens is they will go ahead and start to drill down into the detail with claims analysis. And claims analysis will show them, the amount of money that they're spending for most self-insured funds. And then the fund administrator starts to see the amount that they're spending and starts to question, why isn't there a cost containment solution around this? Because we're spending so much money. And the funds that have really good consultants are doing health risk assessments or surveying the members and direct communication to those members. And generally what comes out of that is a review of the wellness programs, and it can reveal that there is a need for MSK services among its members. So it's multiple different ways to get the data that shows basically that there's a high cost being absorbed by the fund, and they really need a cost containment solution around that.
Well, let's pick up on costs, and Jerry, I'd like you to answer this one from a health plan perspective. Can you share MSK cost trends or insights, and what do the trends mean for labor funds?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And, as I mentioned earlier, I spent a long time on the insurance carrier side, over 20 years, and we see that from a health plan perspective, MSK represents a significant portion of healthcare costs overall. It's usually a top 3 spend that we see, and unfortunately, it's outpacing cancer and diabetes combined. So these cost trends are not lightening up in any way. And a couple of them are due to an aged population. I had mentioned those suffering in silence that aren't addressing their issues. So the costs that are associated with that can be very costly when you're going to specialists, orthopedic surgeons, MRIs, CAT scans. It's at a very high cost to the fund and also an out-of-pocket cost to the member. So when we look at the claims that Sean had mentioned earlier, many of these conditions are chronic and they need this ongoing treatment. So we need to have help with interventions like we have, because when they resort to surgical interventions, those are extensive in nature. 50% of surgeries are ineffective. And unfortunately, we see many people go back for a second surgical procedure, again, at a high cost to the fund, puts the member in some sort of danger, and also out-of-pocket costs. So we want to look at workplace ergonomics to help them improve the workspace. When a doctor of physical therapy like Jen Delman is involved, and every one of our DPTs, They're doing that assessment up front to find out what that individual is doing from a work perspective as well as a personal life perspective. So we want to invest in those preventive type programs. So really, in conclusion, what we're saying is that understanding these MSK costs for labor is critical. We want to make sure that we help them with prevention, early intervention, comprehensive management programs. We want to mitigate those MSK costs, and we're doing so by improving the outcomes of these members and having them avoid surgical procedures so that we can prove some sort of return on investment. So we want labor to know we're here to help. We're not putting them out on their own. We're here to help them. We'll help them assess, and we'll put our money where our mouth is for a return on investment.
Again, we're talking about a digital solution to MSK. And Jen, I want to talk about improving health disparities. Could you discuss a member's experience, number one, and how it helped address issues with, say, demographics or cultural situations?
Yeah, absolutely. So when a member comes into a program to the program, it's a really easy experience. They go through a basic enrollment questionnaire, very similar to if you go to a doctor's office and you're filling out that initial paperwork. They're able to choose the doctor of physical therapy that they want to work with. I think that this is a really important difference from in-person PT. When you go to in-person PT, you're thrown on whoever's schedule has some availability. With our program, you choose based on a photo and bio. Make sure that you relate to that individual that you're going to be working with throughout the program, someone who matches up with your personal needs. We send them the equipment. They do a video call with that PT where they talk about their symptoms, what they have going on. They both get to know each other a little bit. And then the PT puts together a custom and tailored plan specific to that individual, their function, and their goals for the program. So, as they go through the program, they then use our technology, what we call the digital therapist, which is able to guide them through the exercises that their PT put together for them, provide the PT with information on how that member is moving throughout the exercises to make sure that we can review that data and make clinical changes to their sessions based upon their results and their performance. But then also provide the individual, the member, with real time feedback if they do an exercise incorrectly. So I like to call the digital therapist my eyes at home. They're able to see how that member is moving, provide them with that feedback as they go through the exercises, which is incredibly important when you look at PT and making sure that people are doing exercises correctly. And then the member will be working with that PT throughout the program. So talking back and forth, chatting easily, reassessment check-in video calls. So the PT and the member know they're working together. The member knows that their PT is reviewing their results, making the changes, challenging them appropriately, making those adjustments as needed. And when you look at individuals in the program and overall access to care, the number of people who I have spoken with, the number of members who have said, if my company did not provide this to me as a benefit, I would not be able to get PT because they live so far away from a clinic, because they don't have transportation, because they can't take time off work, because they have 3 kids who are in school and doing 15 different sports, because they work full time, whatever it is, they're not able to get the care that they need. As Jerry mentioned earlier, they start suffering in silence. They just are managing it. The symptoms get worse and they end up taking medications. So, especially for those individuals who live rurally, aren't able to access care, this program is a game changer because it increases access. It allows them to do it on their time. Additionally, if for any reason that individual does not have Wi-Fi at home, we can provide a hotspot free of charge. So we really want to make sure with our program, we are providing all necessary technology to make sure that that member has a high level user experience, high level care, and that we provide all necessary technology to make sure that we knock down any of those barriers when it comes to access to care.
Well, as you know, this is a 100% union show, and we like to think that union brothers and sisters are more educated and better educated. And there's a myth about what they call the digital literacy of a unionized workforce. Sean, if you can answer this, we hear that fund members are not tech savvy enough to seek care by using digital solutions. What are you seeing in the market? Can you? I'm sure this is wide open for all kind of comments.
Yeah, Flash, what we're seeing is a lot of companies like ourselves are using technology that union workers already have. We have apps that are already on their cell phones, and they're very comfortable in using their cell phones and opening the Sword app and communicating directly with your digital physical therapist or your physical therapist is very easy. We are also using wearable devices like Apple Watches and Fitbits that incorporate into our program. And so we make it very, very easy for the member to use the technology that they already have. And so we have seen in the market, we've seen a significant increase in the adoption of digital health solutions by these workers because it's given them greater access to the technology, and we support it. And we see this as a growing trend. And it's definitely a myth because union workers are smart. They know how to use technology and they know how to seek care doing it remotely or through telehealth.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I often say my smartphone is smarter than myself because there's a lot on it that I just don't understand. But to your point, it's there. It's there. You just got to know how to use it. Jerry, recently you added a major trade international union to Sword Health and the Sword Health family. Can you walk us through your process and what were the key drivers for selecting Sword Health?
Sure, I'd love to share that because for us to bring this trade union into the Sword family was a significant milestone for us. And we've been selling to labor for a long time, as we had mentioned earlier. It takes a long time to get labor to buy in, but once you're in with them, they're committed to you. They're really loyal, and it's hard to lose them. So, what we did was we've had several meetings. We broke bread. We sat down at a couple of tables with an initial consultation, and we did a needs analysis. It was a very thorough vetting process on their behalf. Our competitors were invited in as well, and they chose Sword. And some of the things that we employed there were, how do we effectively treat these MSK-related conditions? Let us demonstrate from a clinical standpoint that we are far and away the most superior, clinically sound MSK virtual solution in the marketplace. And it's grounded by evidence-based medicine. And we shared that. The platform has to be user-friendly, right? We just came off of that. There is a high literacy rate in technology with labor, but we made these tablets very, very user-friendly and easy to use. The sessions are easy to turn on and turn off and pause, so it increases that member participation. We talked about cost effectiveness and ROI in one of the last comments, and we do that by managing these MSK costs and reducing the overall healthcare costs as well. And we do that through scalability and customization. What we mean by that is this is a scalable program because, as Jen had mentioned, we can get this tablet technology to everybody. Every single member is treated the same. Everyone gets a doctor of physical therapy. And we can customize that by basing our assessment with the labor fund. And then lastly, we take this innovation and we're ready for future ready, I should say, for continuous innovation and improvement. Improve those solutions and making sure that this technology is at the forefront of everything that we do. We talked about all the patents earlier as well that we have filed on a global basis. So once we align those things and we know that the company's in the right direction, we can then help this trade union make the final decision, which they did. We did it over a 4-hour meeting and Philly cheesesteaks, and it was fantastic. And we always like to say we don't just sell into labor, we're part of labor. So after breaking bread and having some cheesesteaks, it worked out really well for us. But we did that with all those things that I had mentioned. And for us, we're delivering this program virtually, but without ever losing the personal touch.
I love it. Now you're making me hungry mentioning those cheesesteaks. You know what? We're almost out of time here, and Jen, I'm gonna give you the last question here. Fund participants, I understand, can self-select digital solutions like the MSK programs, which are offered as a wellness benefit. Can you discuss the pros and cons of allowing participants to do that, to self-select solutions like that?
Absolutely. So, Flash, we might be a little bit biased here, but there's a lot of pros and there's not a whole lot of cons. So, what's really important about our program versus what you think of as in person traditional physical therapy is this is a wellness benefit. So, that individual does not have to take that traditional route where they have to make an appointment with that PCP, wait for that appointment, pay that additional copay. We mentioned taking additional time off work. They are able to recognize that they have SORD as a benefit, self-enroll in the program, and get started right away, which is really important when we look at access to care, providing that flexible solution to the individuals to be able to do it when it's convenient for them. The individual is able to easily raise their hand, say that they need help, and get started with the program. So another thing that's really important is because we're a wellness solution, we sit next to the embedded medical benefits. So we don't take over for their PT visits that they have in their insurance plan. We sit next to that. They're able to easily use this program, which is really important when we look at volume to care. They're not limited by their insurance benefits, and they're able to do these sessions as needed to improve their pain symptoms and their function. Additionally, if for any reason the individual comes into the program and for any reason they're not appropriate, we see about a 1% to 2% rate of individuals who would benefit from in-person care. Because they're working with the doctor of physical therapy, we are able to recognize those appropriate signs and symptoms and then educate the individual on the type of in-person care that they need. So maybe they need to see a specialist, maybe a cardiologist or a neurologist. We're able to guide them towards that, what they would need, or if for any reason they need in-person PT. So working with this wellness benefit with the doctors of physical therapy provides that really holistic solution to the individual to make sure that they're getting the appropriate care that they need. And if for any reason they need that in-person care, we can appropriately educate them and guide them as needed.
Well, you got it all. I appreciate all of you joining us here on America's Workforce. The person you just heard, Jen Delman, Senior Clinical Specialist, Physical Therapist, Jerry Gallo, who is a Regional Vice President of Labor and Trust, and Sean McLaughlin, Vice President of Labor and Trust. Wonderful organization, swordhealth.com. A life free from pain starts right here on America's Workforce. I like that. Okay, thank you so much for doing this. Let's keep in touch and perhaps do it down the road. How does that sound?
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.